Hi Woodfolk, my name is the Metagoblin and today I'm going to be recommending the best spec for each class for leveling in World of Warcraft Legion. Now the answer to this question can depend on your level of skill as a player, since certain DPS specs may be a little better than the tank specs, but I'm going to direct this guide to people completely new to a certain class or even to the game as a whole. And some specs, from the same class are fairly equal, and when it comes to choosing the best DPS spec, the spec with the most survivability, AoE and maneuverability is going to be the most optimal. It's also important to adjust your talents for maximum AoE, AoE damage and persistent survivability, and what I mean by that is, go for the talents that have the most kind of like persistent survivability, the things with shorter cooldowns. I mean, and obviously not every single, talent option has a cooldown, but just go for the ones that are going to heal you, keep you alive the most persistently, right? Since most of the time they are obviously going to be the best option. When I would go for something that's going to persistently keep you alive over something that's, has like a 3-minute cooldown, which is going to reduce your damage a little bit for a short amount of time, and it's on a huge cooldown because you're not going to be using it a lot. The last thing to note is during the lower levels, I'd always recommend leveling up as a tank or healer, since doing dungeons will likely be the fastest way to level, but when you get to higher levels, then usually questing will take over. And obviously Legion is coming tonight, so the specs I'm going to say right now are going to be the most optimal for that situation. For Death Knight, oh yeah, we're going in alphabetical order, by the way, to not be like prejudiced against classes. For Death Knight, it's always going to be blood in my opinion. The main technique for leveling fast is instead of killing one mob, one quest mob at a time, kill about 20 at once, and complete an entire quest in a few seconds. Because you're doing AoE damage, then overall killing more mobs at once will always be better than killing a few at a time or just one at a time. It also means you'll be tagging multiple mobs at once, which means other players cannot steal your mobs. So you don't have to wait around for mobs to respawn or travel further around the map to find more mobs. I know mob tagging is kind of shared right now, but what I'm on about is like you go into a new area, there's loads of mobs you have to kill. I mean, if you're going to have to be the guy who just pulls them all, at least tags them all, and then survives and kills them all, rather than just like doing one at a time and then other people around you are killing mobs and you're not even getting a chance to tag them before another player kills it. And yeah, and Blood Death Knight is probably it's the absolute king of this. In fact, it's probably the best leveling spec in the game, simply because of the fact you cannot die. You could probably even solo a dungeon as soon as you hit 101. But anyway. Let's jump into... Right, Demon Hunter, I definitely go for Vengeance for the same reasons as Blood, since it's a very good self-healing spec with very nice damage and escape mechanics. In fact, the AoE damage is just like out of this world. There's so many different AoE damage abilities which are really nice. Druid, I go for Guardian, but Feral is also a bit tanky, so you may prefer it. The reason I wouldn't go for Balance is simply because of hard casting, and when mobs hit you, it's going to reduce your DPS, but if you're very skilled, then you may... you'll be able to make Balance work because it's a very good AoE spec, and if you're going to do like a fire as free and kite around all the time, right? Then yeah, you can probably pull Balance off. For Druid, I go. Oh no, wait, I'm reading the wrong part of the script. Here we go. We're on to Hunter. For Hunter, I definitely go for Beast Mastery, since AoE burst damage is the best out of the other specs, and also because you have a pet that deals more damage, which means it's more likely than that enemy mobs are going to attack that pet, and it's pretty easy to keep your pet alive. You can also summon more than one pet, which means there will be an abundance of targets for mobs to hit, which means it will just generally mean that you're less likely to be hit in the face, so that's kind of a nice thing, and just basically means you're going to probably survive more. For Mage, I'd actually go for Arcane, since it's just simply the best way killing mobs that are like stacked up, and it also has very strong maneuverability, which means you'll be able to cast without even being hit at all, which is really nice. For Monk, I'd go for Brewmaster, but possibly Windwalker, if you're feeling a bit confident, since Windwalker CC is actually quite nice and AoE damage is also really nice. But for Brewmaster, you'll have a permanent 30% damage reduction if you manage to stagger properly, also great AoE damage and decent self-healing. In a lot of situations you will be going against like bosses which may be a little bit more difficult, and you may obviously find a rare boss which is going to give you nice XP, and sometimes the DPS specs just cannot keep themselves alive in those long soloing situations. Anyway, for Paladin I go for Prot because the damage is just mental right now, and it's very easy to learn since there's like a very small amount of abilities to manage, and the self-healing is also quite decent. As a priest, Shadow is the only real option because it's simply going to kill mobs faster than Disc, and the AoE is extremely strong as well as the survivability and maneuverability. That angelic feather thing is just really, really fun. Right, for Rogue, the decision is quite difficult, since, you know, all the specs are very strong due to their strong survivability and maneuverability in CC, so really I'd pick a spec you're not going to play at endgame, just so you don't get bored of a spec before you even start raiding. But, you know, if I was going to level a Rogue, I'd personally go for Outlaw, since it has a very good AoE damage, but most importantly it has better ramp up time compared to your specs, and, you know, fights normally don't last long while leveling up. It's just going to be one mob that you have to kill very quickly, and Outlaw's probably just going to do that a little bit better. You also have the grappling hook, which also can be like the difference between getting in range to tag a mob or letting somebody else kill it before you even get there. So that could just speed up the questing process a little bit as well. For Shaman, I'd go for Enhancement. This is actually the spec I'll be maining in Legion. The reason I go and pick Enhancement over Elemental is simply because it's a melee spec, which means, you know, again, you won't have your casts interrupted. Enhancement is also an extremely unique spec where your AoE damage will actually improve your single target damage, which means you'll be killing mobs probably quicker than most other specs while AoEing. And obviously, the faster mobs die, the less likely they'll be smacking you in the face, which increases your chance of survival. No, not less chance. So just fed. You know, when you kill a mob, you're taking down 5 mobs. If you let those mobs, even if you're doing really good damage, like you're killing them all very at an equal pace, if you're doing it too slowly, then those mobs, while they're alive, are going to do a hell of a lot of damage on you. So Enhancement is just a kind of a spec where it will kill things like in a single target situation. The single target damage is really nice. You're going to kill mobs very quickly, which means there'll be less mobs hitting you in the face, which is just overall going to reduce the chance of you just randomly dying. For Warlock, I go for Affliction, since the cleave damage is higher and you'll be casting a little less than the other specs, which means more time to kite and run away to evade damage while you slowly rot down about 25 mobs. For Warrior, I'd go for Protection if you're a beginner, since, you know, with Ignore Pain, it's truly quite an immortal. I don't know why I say quite then. It just truly is an immortal spec, which is going to, you know, make taking down bosses and multiple mobs quite easy. But if you're feeling a bit more confident, then I'll go for Fury, because Meat Cleaver. You know, seriously, just read that thing. It's awesome. Meat Cleaver. Okay, I'll briefly explain it. Basically, you pop one Whirlwind, and then you pop Rampage or Bloodthirst, and that damage immediately becomes AoE. So single target damage turns into AoE. It's a bit like Enhancement, and it's really nice. And that's it, pretty much it, guys. End of the day, if you're really, really pro at a certain spec, you want to level it, and you feel confident that you're probably going to be better at leveling in that spec because you just know it better, then just go for that spec. I mean, you can probably level in any spec. Maybe not certain healer specs, but you can probably even level up in a healing spec these days. So, anyway, that is the end of the video. My name is Goblin. Until my next video, ciao.